Once again, welcome to What It Takes Radio and the Interesting Ideas podcast. And today we're talking about how getting your toenails and fingernails painted can change the world. What could that be about?
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Stan the Radio Man. Once again, it's a Friday, and Friday is a day where we think about the future, we think about leadership, and we think about transformation. And this is part of the ongoing and hopefully growing part, which we call the Transformation Project, which is about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of us are beginning to say, maybe we should come together and see if we can do something significant, not just manage change, not just deal with change, not even just help be a change maker, which is a good thing to be, an agent of change, but even more so, how can we make that change significant so that there is significant difference in us and who we are, and how we serve, and how we live our lives, truly to be a transformed person. Hey, my wife said to me the other day, she said, I watched your video. Why don't you ever use those funky glasses I got you? I said, she said, remember we were at the museum in New York, the Metropolitan Museum. No, the Museum of Modern Art. Metropolitan is classic. MoMA is the kind of the funky modern art. And so she bought me these reading glasses. And she said, I like you to wear them sometimes. Makes you look a little less old. Makes you look at least a little bit funkier. Now, I'm not so sure that I want to be transformed into somebody funky. I'm basically kind of very old-fashioned. But I said, okay, well, let's give that a try. And so that's my first step in trying to be a little bit transformed in my appearance, a little different glasses at this stage in life. However, what I want to talk about today is a very, very deep personal story for me. And obviously, it relates to almost everybody, particularly if you're a woman. This is pretty significant for many of them. And obviously, for many of you, it's just something that you can actually learn something from, too. Here we go with a story. I'm related to a gentleman named Larry Ward, who married a cousin of my father, and my father's name was Hustad, and her name was Hustad, and she met and married Larry Ward. So I am somewhat related to Larry Ward, and you can check him out. He is one of the unsung transformation heroes in America. He probably saved millions of lives, and hardly anyone has ever heard of him. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He was quite a character, quite an entrepreneur, and he was very much involved for a number of years in an organization which is still around called World Vision, which was an attempt to spread not only spiritual realities all around the world, but to do so not just in the sense of saving another soul, but of course of helping save and preserve another body, a person, and to do all kinds of other projects that would help that become a reality. And he worked at that for a number of years, and then finally he had a vision. He said, as one of my friends said, particularly in this area, he said, if you really wanted to help transform the world, make sure everybody has clean drinking water available right where they are. If you could do that, that would actually transform a lot of the world. And that's true. I had another friend who was going to transform the world by doing this. He was one of the first persons to get involved in the belief that sunlight, solar work, could be used to actually heat and cook food. So he was working on solar cookers. And why is that? He said, well, do you realize how many young children are burned and sometimes even die because they fall into the cooking fires of the village of their family? He said it's dangerous. Plus the fact, you have to go out and you have to chop the wood, and then you have to start a fire, and then you have to use that fire and keep it going, and that's how you cook food. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually have something where all you have to do is put the food into the solar cooker and leave it there for a number of hours, and it would cook the food. And he was very much involved in that. And those are people I've had into my life. And so that's part of what we're about, looking at that. Well, my friend Larry came to the conclusion, well, one of the biggest problems in the world is children die of hunger. Probably still. I've been told that every 6 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that maybe a child suffers malnutrition, and because of that catches a disease and maybe dies. What could be more tragic than that? And so his idea was, let's try and help. And he started an organization called Food for the Hungry. When you talk about an organization where the name says what you do, Food for the Hungry. And it's still going, and he was the founder of that. Now, he was also very much involved in Southeast Asia, and with particularly in Vietnam. And of course, we all know the story of how Vietnam became a part of the American experience. Well, I can tell you, he was one who, in some ways, because of relationships he had, was somewhat instrumental. Just this ordinary man of helping to, when the war was finally winding down after all of the tragedies that went into that, when the POWs like John McCain and those who had spent 5, 6, 7, even up to 8 years in prison as a result of being captured by the North Vietnamese when they were in bombing raids during the war, bringing those prisoners of war back. He was very much involved in that. But then when everything collapsed, he was one who was primarily involved in helping rescue many of the Vietnamese refugees who were then trying to flee. Obviously, many of them didn't want to live under communism. They had worked with the Americans and the South Vietnamese government, and they thought they'd be killed. And so thousands of them got into leaky boats and tried to get away. Now, that's a story that many of you know something about. Now, I was very much involved in that because at that time, as a much younger man, I was very much involved in helping settle the refugees that came particularly into Minneapolis area, where the Lutheran Social Service, and I was at that time a member of a Lutheran church, was bringing people. And now here was the deal. At that time, when a person became a refugee, they went to, you could call it an internment camp. Now, it's not a concentration camp, but it was where they had to stay there, and they had basic stuff, but they would not be allowed to go into the country until they had a sponsor. So somebody would say, I will help take care of them. I think it's a great idea. And what happened was that a number of people and churches and other organizations say, okay. And so then they'd say, okay, you promise now that this family or these people, you'll take care of them. You'll get them oriented. You'll make sure that they have a place to live. You'll take care of them so they don't become public charges. Now, some of that, but okay. But I was very much involved in that. And because I was a teacher at that time, and some of the children who were coming actually landed up in the school where I was teaching, and they didn't know English. I happened to know that one of the men that I had helped bring over had been an officer in the South Vietnamese army, and he knew English pretty well. And so I got him a job tutoring the Vietnamese children uh, who were obviously learning language, but working with them so that they could do better in learning English and in becoming very successful in the experiment that we were doing. And of course, that was really unique. Well, here's the story I want to tell you that I think is really kind of neat. At one of these camps in California, uh, my friend Larry, who was quite a promoter, who really knew how to, he was a marketer. He had actually got the then movie star, and you know, was well known. Her name was Tippi Hedren, and she became the spokesman for Food for the Hungry and for the work he did. And so what he did is he decided to bring her, this beautiful looking woman, and went and went to the camps, and they were holding meetings and rah-rah sessions. Well, that was kind of neat, but what happened was that many of the Vietnamese women were fascinated by her makeup and her fingernails and her toenails. They thought that was really neat. And so what Larry arranged to do, and he got Tippi to help him, is they started giving classes to the Vietnamese people. Obviously, most of them were women, but not all, on how to do that, how to learn how to do, a manicure and a pedicure. And it spread throughout the camp and other places. Well, you know where this story is going. Almost every country, part of the country today, who dominates the manicure and pedicure, what you would call the nail business? Hundreds, thousands of those businesses are run by Vietnamese. First generation, second generation, third generation. Happened in Minneapolis. And we also had the fun that one of them actually started a Vietnamese restaurant about 4 or 5 blocks from our house in the St. Paul. And we helped him go. And it was tough, but it was a small restaurant. By the way, they had no problem getting help because all 4 of the children worked in the restaurant, and he and his wife, they did all the work. They cooked all the food, and struggled hard, and made that restaurant happen. We watched the children grow up. There were 5 of them. They all went on to college, and as far as lived successful careers. And one of them decided to take over the restaurant that mom and dad had, and they're obviously much older now and left. They took it over, and of course, they made it into a chain, and the American dream. A transformation took place because a man decided to help a group of people who had obviously some ambition to simply teach them how to look a little bit nicer. Fingernails and toenails, a cosmetic thing. But how you look sometimes reflects how you feel, and how you feel can affect how you believe and how you do and what you look forward to doing. And that's what happened. And every time, if you go or see a manicure, pedicure shop, and if it seems to be that it's, as it obviously many times is run by those people who are of the Vietnamese, that's where it happened. That's where it began. Simple man. Lived simply, died broke, But in the meantime, he had transformed the lives, first of all, in food for the hungry, because his whole idea was don't just give people food, teach them how to grow their own food. Oh, what a unique idea, you know? Don't just give them a fish, teach them how to fish. So it was we help them, but then we teach them how to grow their own food. So, as I often said about my dear friend Larry, when he passed away, uh, Larry has died, but because of Larry, millions of people lived. That's a pretty transformational project, wouldn't you say? I'm done with that story for today. If you'd like to know more, I'd be glad to introduce you to some of the people who were actually very much a part of that project and part of that story. They're obviously older. My good friend Larry is now gone. But if you want to know more about how, transformation is oftentimes just somebody meets a simple desire or need and gives it their full effort and see what happens. We will see. Well, thank you for your time today, and think about this. And if you want to ask more, stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. We've got lots of stories like this, but this is one that you need to hear, and I hope it may inspire you to think about what could I do in a simple way that maybe would lead to transformed lives, a lifetime legacy of transformed lives. Certainly sounds better than just leaving some people you might not like more money than they need. Think about that. I'm Stan the radio man, and I wish you all the best and blessings, and I'd love to hear from you, and I would love to tell your story. Why don't you share it with us? Working with my friend Joe Pine, who's writing the book on transformation, and he always says, okay, Stan, remember, transformationsbook.substack.com, transformationsbook.substack.com. Read his stuff, and maybe you will be a part of the book on the world of transformations coming out sometime the next year or so when we all get it done. But the transformation project will continue long after the book. Best and blessings to you. I appreciate you and your time. Take care, and bye for now.